Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I have an opportunity to address a video that multiple people have linked me. People really wanted to know my opinion on the topic. I'm not going to make a very in-depth video. This is a very long video. And it was a video that Brandon Campbell was kind enough to host for us with Richard Hawthorne talking. Now, if you don't know who Richard Hawthorne is, you don't know anything about powerlifting, because the man's strength to weight ratio is probably the highest of any athlete I've ever seen in the world. We are talking about a guy who at 130 pounds squats and deadlifts over 600 pounds. Well, actually, let's be realistic. He deadlifts over 600 pounds 4 reps. The guy is disgustingly strong, and accordingly, because he has an insane strength to weight ratio and obviously has amazing genetics, he also clearly has to know a lot about the leverages in his own body. Nobody develops that type of strength to weight ratio without creating maximum leverages with every joint in their body. So he clearly knows what he's talking about there. Now, what I want to address, and this is a question I've been asked of, do I think the deadlift is a pull or a press, based upon what he said. Now, he's tried to argue that it is a push and it isn't a pull. And in a lot of ways, he's right. And particularly, he's right when it comes to maximizing your leverages, of that you need to think of it as a push. Because if you're treating it purely as a pull, you would effectively be doing like a stiff leg deadlift. You would be pulling the weight exclusively with your hamstrings, your glutes, and your erectors, in which case you could be shortchanging yourself 50, maybe 100 pounds off of your deadlift, off your maximum deadlift, if you're pulling that way. He does incorporate a lot of hip drive, a lot of leg drive. He uses his quads to help move the weight all the way through the full range of motion. And he breaks it down pretty well, and he talks about driving through the floor, which effectively in some ways replicates the driving force that you would get on a squat, which is a push. And he is right. But the thing is that he mentioned, and he showed you from the side, that the back should be in the finished position and you're really using the legs and the hips to drive it up. However, even in his demonstration, if you watch it from the side in the video, there is extension of the spine happening. There is still a very, very strong pull element involved. Even in his demonstration, with him using the perfect technique, and his technique is perfect, and trying to eliminate the pulling aspect of it to make it into a push as much as possible, there was still a visible pull there in the video. And if you watch that part of the video, you'll see what I'm talking about. There is extension of his spine relative to his hips. And it's unavoidable that you can take the erectors out of it, not just as stabilizers, but as actual movers, because they are involved in actually flexing and moving at that point. And even a few inches of range of motion of those muscles is dramatic, because they have a very short range of motion in their function themselves. So 2 or 3 inches actually is a strong contraction and movement of the various erectors in the back. But what I think is interesting, and I really appreciate about it, is the fact of, even if you say, okay, he's not completely right, that it's both, that it's still a pull, I think the mental cues that he gives there, I personally thought were very, very intelligent. And they were a very good way at looking at it if you want to train yourself to get better leverages, and thinking of it as a push and the drive through the floor and driving through the ground and making it into a push as much as possible. And I think it's very good that he presented it that way, even if it isn't technically true that it is still a pull while being a push. The mental cues that he presents there, I think for a lot of us out there, if we really were to apply those, would probably add some extra weight to our deadlift. So from a practical perspective, even though from a technical perspective he isn't necessarily right with that statement, from a practical perspective, his way of thinking about it might really be useful for a lot of us. It might actually help myself, you, a lot of other people increase our deadlift to try to use the mental cues that he gave us and apply those. So I think it was still a helpful video. I still think it was a useful video, and I appreciate it when I get someone like that who clearly has learned to maximize their own leverages at the ultra elite level to give us little tips like that that might help us out. And so while I disagree with him saying that it isn't a pull, I think his perspective on it is brilliant, and I think it would be very useful and helpful overall. And so for those of you who are asking, who are doing silly things like push-pull leg splits, what day should you do the deadlift? All of them. Because clearly it's a pull, clearly it's a push, and clearly it uses your legs. So go ahead and throw it in every time you train if you want. All right, guys, so that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.